in the impact list. There will be some time for general Q&A as well. So just real briefly, we're in this point of the process where we are in the identified impacts, and the developers responded. We're working on towards generating an agreement. And here's the meeting schedule where we are. And we are here June 7th. And we're working towards preparing a support letter based on hopefully understanding we can come to tonight. As I say every time, we post everything on our website at www.detroitmi.gov/FisherBody21, and you can also sign up for email updates from that website. So I'm going to hand it off to my colleague, Director Nicole Sherrod-Freeman. Before I do that, I just want to emphasize some of the kind of ground rules for discussion that we've emphasized the last few meetings as we go in and talk about, these issues and around this project. So one is, we're going to respect each other and the CBO process. I'm going to ask for everyone, developer, NAC community, to be listening actively and focus on understanding others' perspectives. We're going to focus on ideas and not individuals. Ask everyone to keep an open mind to those other perspectives. Always going to assume good intentions and good faith for everyone involved. And finally, we're here to work together for the benefit of the community. And so with that, I'd like to introduce Director Nicole Sherrod-Freeman for the city of Detroit. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Thanks for that, Aaron. And I want to thank the NAC and the community and the developers for giving me just a couple of minutes here at the top of the agenda. I lead economic development and workforce development for the city. And I'm here tonight because, just briefly, I wanted you to hear directly from the city that this project is important. We've all been waiting since, I think it was 94, 93 for some development on this site, and what the developers, these Detroit developers, are giving us an opportunity to do in this community is hear your voice, hear your concerns, and really move forward with this as a development that preserves the history of the building, upgrades what's happening on that corner and in the community for everybody, and really just gives us a way forward without the city having to come out of pocket with heavy expenses, because they are willing to take the risk and use city incentives and state incentives and the like to get this done. And so I just wanted to pull up, because we're about to get into an awful lot of detail, as well we should, on this front. And I just wanted to pull up for a second and reground us before we get into the details in what this could mean if we can move forward to the community. We know your concerns are affordable housing and productive uses of the space and investments in the surrounding community, jobs for Detroiters. We hear what you want. The developers are prepared to respond to that. And I just wanted to say that I'm hoping that tonight we can all come to the table here in good faith, and that we can, we took your letter very seriously, your letter where you said you didn't believe, that where the NAC said you weren't sure that the developer was operating in good faith. Like we take that very seriously. And that kind of statement really puts, really presses us all to press pause on the discussion, to be sure we can reset in a, quite frankly, a format and a venue, and with a level of honesty with each other that moves us forward in ways where we're collaborating and we're in partnership to figure this out. When we say things like the developer isn't negotiating in good faith, it really, as you know, as it would do for you, puts the project at risk. And so we want to talk that through with you. We thought it was important to clear the air at the top of the hour before we get into all the details. And I just want to say one other thing for your consideration as we move forward with this. Like some of you, I was involved with the NAC and the process for FCA. And as you think about what you're asking of the developers, I just want to say that as they bring forward what they are able and willing to do based on whether the math works, I would just ask that you not compare them to other large industrial developers, but remember that they are Detroiters who are trying to do the right thing by Detroiters by making this investment and taking this risk. So I'm going to stay on and be quiet while you guys get into the rest of the detail, but it was important for us to say at the top of the hour that we really want to figure out how to move this forward and make this work. Richard, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, NAC members and community and city as well for hosting this process. So I definitely wanted to, tell you guys how our thought process on this and where we came from the beginning. Our goal was to do something, amazing here on a few different levels, and dispel some myths on a few different levels. And the one that we were and are so proud of is this idea of exposing Detroit contractors and Detroit workers to projects that they've been excluded from at this size, and giving them the platform to allow that to never be something that can be said again. And so that was our focus from the beginning. We are very big on not over-promising and under-delivering. And so although we did things like talk to Nicole before we were even awarded the project about how we wanted to work with Detroit at work and make sure that there was no reason, no possibility of not having maximum Detroiters on the site, we'll always use language and have used language like we intend to partner with. Our thought in terms of answering you guys was, how do we get in a room amongst our partners and come up with as many yeses as fast as possible? So that was always our goal. How do we show that as Detroiters, and DPS graduates and the whole thing, proud that we were getting a chance to show what can be done. That was always our goal, and having conversations in detail about how do we get to solutions. So we were indeed shocked with the letter, because something must have gotten lost in the translation, and we wanted to be able to have deep conversations with you all about how do we get to solutions that work. We're definitely operating in good faith. Our goal was to make that super clear, and so we look forward to continuing this conversation, and where there are places that we feel we can't get there or we don't understand, really having the conversation with each and every one of you guys about how do we get to a solution? What is it that you're looking for? What can we actually do? And what's going on in the process? And we hope that's well received, and to show you all that we are have been operating in good faith from the beginning. So thank you all for being here.
Okay. Thank you, Director Shard-Freeman. Thank you, Richard. I want to acknowledge we do. If the NAC members maybe can just raise their hand briefly, just so people can see who you are, or come on screen. I just want to acknowledge. So we have Detonia Clark, Malik Wally, Lima Casals, Ron Chapman, John Patrick. Am I missing anyone? I see Lynette Roberson is here, and DR Castello. So I know that Sheila Hamilton was not going to be able to make it today. thank you all for being here. And I think there's a couple other we're possibly missing. And maybe they're having technology challenges, so we've been trying to reach out to them to make sure that they are here. For attendees, we will have Q&A later. We do have a Q&A function as well if you want to put a question into the Q&A there, we can queue those up. I noticed in the attendees, I think we have Council President Sheffield on the line. I don't know if you wanted to give a brief greeting. I'm just going to give you that opportunity before we move any further. Council President, are you there?
Oh, hello. I'm sorry. I didn't realize that was for me. This is Ari Ruttenberg. I'm actually a policy analyst with President Sheffield's office, and just wanted to say I'm really interested in seeing what's going on today. And yeah, I will be here in attendance.
Okay. Thanks for your participation in your office and support throughout. Okay. So thank you.
Aaron, I just wanted to add my apologies. Fraser Kempson from Member Young's office is also on the call.
Okay. Maybe we can ask if he wants to give greetings. Mr. Kempson. Okay. If not, that's all right. You can certainly jump in another time. So without any further ado, I think I'm going to go back to our agenda. And I know we have some unfinished business regarding some environmental discussions. There's been a lot of questions about that. I think we want to take about maybe 20 minutes to allow the development team. You have your consultants here on the line. We also have representatives from state and Eagle and DWSD, and I think BC. So Richard, maybe you want to introduce the members of your team who are here, and go from there.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. We have representatives from Applied Environmental, which they've done all the environmental research and worked with us to come up with solutions, best practices for moving forward with the abatement. And so we have, I see Kirk Chapman and not sure if there's anyone else on. And then we have our structural, our actual civil engineers, Manic Smith, and trying to find the actual representative who I saw was on here somewhere. And then from your side, you want to introduce everyone from there while I look for the names? From Eagle and DWSD.
Sure. If the representatives from Eagle want to introduce themselves.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. My name is Dan Goff. I'm a brownfield coordinator. I cover the city of Detroit and Wayne County for Eagle. So we handle brownfield redevelopment projects when they do come to the state level. And then also with me is Dr. April Wendling. April, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is April Wendling. I'm district supervisor with Eagle's Air Quality Division in the city of Detroit. Our office is located in Cadillac Place.
And then I think we also have Ms. Stuhlmiller from DWSD.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Sarah Stuhlmiller. I'm an engineer with Detroit Water and Sewerage. I work for the Stormwater Management Group, specifically with compliance with local and state regulations.
Thank you for joining us again, as you were with us a few weeks ago. And then finally, I see Malik Johnson from BC.
Hi, everyone. Malik Johnson, environmental specialist with BC.
Well, welcome back. And I believe this is your third go round of us. So thanks for being so dedicated. So I'm Richard. I'm going to leave it to your team. I know that there were some things you wanted maybe to present, or did you just want to take questions from the NAC on specific issues?
Thank you. So we have Nick DeSimplaire from Manic Smith for our civil, and you guys tell me. I think they can certainly present the process, but I didn't want to eat up too much time. I think there were some specific questions from the NAC, and so if we jump right in there and then kind of fill any gaps with further explanations of the process, that might be the best way to go.
Okay, so you want to take questions?
Yes.
Okay, so NAC members, I know this was a request that you wanted to get some time with the environmental experts. So would you want to raise your hand? You can use the reactions button, or I think it's Alt-Y. Okay, Ms. Casals.
Oh, wow, I'm the first one. Okay, hi, everybody. Good to see everybody here. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. My first question, so this is the environmental section. I do have a lot of questions that I've typed out. I'm pulling it up. So my first question is, can you describe in detail the process for removing the asbestos from the building? We were provided with a 94-page report detailing where all the tons of asbestos is. And in subsequent meetings, we were told it would not be moved down residential streets, but using Harper to 94. However, people do live off of Harper, specifically in Genesis Villas, and there are a few other single-family homes. I know it's summertime. I personally have children. I personally have a garden. I am very concerned as to how the protection of fugitive dust, especially asbestos, lead, any other hazardous materials in the building will be contained and moved. What is the monitoring? And if something is out of compliance, then what are the enforcement mechanisms to make sure that that gets contained as quickly as possible?
Okay. There's a lot of questions here, so I don't know who would want to go first. Does the environmental consultant want to go first? That's fine. Then we can follow up with regulatory.
I think that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Kurt Chapman. I'm with Applied Environmental. We are not asbestos abatement contractors, but I've done enough of it to understand the basic principles and the precautions and the regulatory framework for abatement, which is removing the asbestos from the building, transporting it for disposal. Typically, when they abate an area in the building, they seal it off with Viscreen to make a workspace, negative air pressure. The outside of the workspace is monitored for fibers. And in this case, because the building is pretty much at least the west, north, and east end are built out to the sidewalk, we will be doing perimeter air monitoring as suggested by EGLE for asbestos fibers, and to make sure that there is no release into the neighborhood. The material is moved by licensed abatement firm, licensed by the Licensing and Regulatory Affairs. All the workers are licensed, the project managers are licensed and certified. The material typically is wetted down, removed, and put into specific heavy-duty bags that are double bagged and tied and sealed with duct tape. And these are not so average garbage bags, trust me. And they're labeled, obviously, with asbestos waste. They are typically put on a truck and driven to the landfill by a licensed waste hauler. Again, this is all double bed and have been weighted down to keep the dust down. You know, the outside of the abatement area is monitored in accordance with EPA and legal standards. Licensing of the workers is done through licensing and regulatory affairs. So, and then we'll have the perimeter air monitoring that will be assessed on a daily basis to make sure that there are no fibers. And it basically is a total fiber count. So we would do an initial set of surveys at baseline for the neighborhood prior to the work beginning, and then the work would begin. And it would be not the whole building, not even the whole floor at once, but specific manageable areas within the building would be abated one by one. The state does have inspectors to come out and inspect the work site and the paperwork and the certifications to make sure everything is being done for the asbestos according to state and federal regulations. Lead-based paint, that's removed in a similar fashion. That's managed under community health, I believe, and MIOSA. And then that waste is containerized, labeled, and then transported to the landfill by a licensed waste transporter. Does that kind of answer your questions? And then active monitoring during the workday will be conducted during these removal activities.
Yes, I thank you for that. And if I'm understanding, you said that there will be daily monitoring?
Yes, actually, every day we're out there, there will be continuous air monitoring, sampling, and evaluation of the sample percentage. Yes.
Okay. Does that monitoring include those on the front line? For example, those houses that are along Harper on the way to 94, will they have air quality monitors as well, or is the monitoring only on the site itself?
Well, no, it's on the site, but also the perimeter, but given the sensitive nature again, of that area, we can certainly set monitors up on that, in that area, adjacent to
Great.
Yep.
Great. Okay. Now, as far as the workers who are removing this hazardous material, how is their health and well-being of their families being provided for? And also the dump site, where is that going? As well as the health and wellness of the folks that might live near the dump site?
Okay. The abatement workers go through a several-step process. They have a baseline medical exam. They have annual medical exams, X-rays, and spirometry. They also are licensed initially and then certified every year. They are required to be having a half-face respirator and changing out the cartridges, particulate HEPA-type cartridges, on a daily basis. They wear tie-back suits and gloves and tape up, again, the sleeves and the openings for the legs with duct tape. Obviously, they wear hard hats, safety glasses, if need be, hearing protection. And then the inspectors who would come out from LARA, Licensing and Regulatory Affairs, will also check to make sure that they are complying with state and federal regulations. The waste itself goes to a standard solid waste landfill under manifest and approval by Waste Management or Republic, or I don't know if it's been decided which landfill, but there are certain areas of those landfills where garbage goes that are specifically set aside for asbestos, which again stays in the bag. It's never been opened, and then it's put into the landfill and covered daily with a daily cover, just like all other solid waste. The landfill itself is responsible for its own monitoring of its workers and also the area around it. And then they're under scrutiny of ILO, Materials Management Division. So, and they have to provide then paperwork if requested by the state inspector that they're in compliance with their permit and all applicable state and federal regulations. So that is how that is, then protects the area around the landfills. And then it's not been determined which of the landfills this waste would be going to. Obviously, there's some out in Denton Township. There's one up in Lennox Township. There's one in Sumter Township. That hasn't since off the top of my head. There's probably a couple more. So, but they are regulated by ISO also, and closely regulated for solid waste management.
Okay, thank you so much.
No.
I wonder, because this team has been very adamant about using subcontractors that are primarily Detroit-based, which I am definitely in favor of. What is, I guess, like the chain of command, and does everyone need the same sort of hazmat licensure? And should something go wrong in this very well thought out plan, then what happens and what are the consequences, or how is it remediated?
That may be well, from a contractor, subcontractor standpoint, yes. And then that's up, I think the goal of the development team is to use, again, Detroit-based personnel who are licensed and trained to do as much of the work as possible. I don't think a specific abatement contractor has been selected yet, but and from a regulatory standpoint, that's probably a better question from either if there is an issue of something that needs to be addressed, how they would go about and do it. And then it's not all legal. Then you have licensing and regulatory affairs. They have community health, and they also have MIOSA. So there's a couple of different entities that could possibly be involved from a regulatory standpoint.
It looks like Kevin Lalonde has his hand up. Maybe there's more you wanted to add on that piece.
Yeah, please.
Thank you, sir.
No, my pleasure.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Kurt, for that great description of everything. I just wanted to chime in as the lead general contractor on the project and let you know that my employees in my company, everybody who works outside the office, has a 6-month window of time to become safe in asbestos handling and abatement. So it's an additional OSHA training step that I'd make my team take. If they're going to be working on a project in that first 6 months, they are put into a fast track program and go through that abatement training program. So my own internal team members all are trained in how to handle it. On this project, we'll have a project management team. Everybody on the project management team, whether they're a project manager, a project engineer, or a project superintendent, is going to be OSHA 30 trained and asbestos trained. So they'll have, the highest level of training that OSHA provides. We do that through the CAM, which is the Construction Association of Michigan. So we go through their certified trainers. On the project, Kurt alluded to it, we really do work in isolated areas. So imagine, I'm going to tell you that one of the things on the building that, that we've recognized it has asbestos in it is the caulk that holds the windows into the metal window frames. I think you've all seen the metal window frames on this building, and you've seen how many there are. So you can imagine how much caulk we have to remove from those metal frames in order to, package it into a double bagged garbage bag that's duct taped. And just to be clear, there are regulations on how thick that plastic has to be. It's not, it's not paper thin trash bags that you keep in your kitchen. It's heavy duty industrial bags that are double bagged and taped up. So just to be clear, but that caulk is, I don't want to say non-friable, but it's pretty intact, right? It's pretty together. So it doesn't become airborne very easily. But what we have our workers do is create a bubble, like a literal surrounding of plastic around the area that they're working. They put this vacuum inside the room. The vacuum has a filter on it that's a HEPA filter. So it constantly sucks air out of that room, pushes it through a filter, and sends it out into the environment in a clean manner. For the workers, they're in a space that if any of that asbestos does become friable or does, become airborne, essentially, it is sucked in through that vacuum, filtered, and clean air is sent out to the environment. That's why we do the external air monitoring. We want to make sure we're aware if there is a rip in the plastic or, call it a chink in the armor. We just want to make sure that we're aware of that and shut down the site in a quick manner. We don't turn off the fans because that's helping suck the air into the fan and through a filter, but we do shut down the site and shut down the work that's going on. Again, the people who are in there working on this have these Tyvek suits, have these half face masks on. They've got filters changing all the time. They're really taped into place. And when they leave that space, they go into an enclosed space that also has this fan. They take off their clothing. They make sure that it is thrown away into a bag, taped up, enclosed, and then they go ahead and they put on their own clean clothes to go home. So it's a pretty regimented process. Again, the managers on site who are in charge of the job site are well aware of the process. The people inside the bubble that are doing the asbestos abatement work are hyper aware of the process, and we take every step that is required to make sure that they're safe.
And also, they are in essentially a bubble, a heavily curtained area. In addition, is what I've usually seen. I'm sure that would be the case here as well. Correct?
That's absolutely the case. Yeah, I tried to say that in the beginning, that we really do bubble them in with plastic, put that vacuum inside the bubble so that we're sucking clean air into that bubble all the time and pushing the filtered, potentially dirty air out of the bubble.
Those areas are very heavily curtained.
Yep.
Well, the only thing I would want to add from the regulatory standpoint is what we at Eagle look at, and I think the gentleman from Applied did a very good job in explaining all this, but I just wanted to add a couple of things from our perspective. Of course, we are under NESHAP regulations, and that means National Emission Standards for Hazardous Air Pollutants, just so you can be familiar with that term, NESHAP. That's NESHAP. And we are going to, the contractor, whoever the abatement contractor is going to have to do a very thorough asbestos survey. Okay, because asbestos is not asbestos is not asbestos. There's many different kinds. Some are more hazardous than others. So it's not just where there's asbestos and how much asbestos, but what kind. It's been talked about it being, very heavily bagged. If something can't be bagged, there are other containers that are used, and sometimes if that's too big, there are special wrappings that would be employed and things be labeled very carefully. So we're looking for at Eagle that a very thorough asbestos survey is done. The second thing that we're looking for at AQD is 10 days before any asbestos abatement is done, we are notified. And then if there's any demolition or remodeling, because I don't believe there's any major demolition going on. In this case, it's more of renovation, is my understanding. And we would be available at that point as well. This is where I'm going to take a very important couple minutes to really brag up on my staff. I have 3 of the best asbestos inspectors, and you are very fortunate that they're located in the Detroit office. They are very, very well aware of this project. So nobody's going to get away with anything. If anybody's afraid of that, not that anybody's trying to, I'm not making that accusation. Please don't think I am. But they know where this is located. Daniel, you're laughing because, we work here too. We know where this is at. They drive by regularly, and they know who the contractors are going to be, and there's a lot of communication there. So if anybody needs to contact me, please feel free to give me a call at the Detroit office, and I can put everybody in contact with everybody else, and we can all become very fast friends. That's very, very important. We work together on these things. As far as where this goes, it is called a Type 2 landfill. And most of the landfills of any size are Type 2 landfills in this area. It's not going to go to some very small landfill. And as Allied detailed very, very nicely, there are special sections of a landfill where this is deposited. So you're not going to have to worry about any kind of friable asbestos being, going out into the community or down the road or from the landfill. I really honestly cannot see anything like that happening. So hopefully that can alleviate your fears in that area. And from what I've heard tonight, I'm very pleased with the things that everybody said. They're right on top of it.
Thank you, Dr. Wendling. Couple just maybe housekeeping notes. So one, as a panelist, if you are speaking, please do turn on your video, because our attendees can't see you or who's speaking if your video is not on. And that's one of the weird functions of webinar that I'm getting used to here. 2, I think we've been joined by 2 more NAC members. I know Shanita Gary and DR Castle have joined us. And I'm trying to get Ms. Pat linked later on. I know she's having some technical difficulties, but hopefully she can get on. 3, and I see, Halima, your hand is up, but
You're on mute, Aaron.
look, I muted myself. Thank you. So if that's okay, I did want to just acknowledge those questions that came in through the chat. They came back a little bit ago. So one was, how often is this type of asbestos removal done and for how long? And is there a specific company that does asbestos removal? So I think Richard or your team, maybe those can be quickly answered.
Yeah, absolutely. So the this type of asbestos in some level of quantity is actually fairly common in any historic building. And so most of the historic buildings you've seen done around the city and state and really country, this has been an ongoing process since, asbestos became outlawed and, and had to be dealt with. So in the early days, there were people who thought that it was ideal to just kind of encapsulate it. We've never been those people. We've always been removal people, even in scenarios where there are some scenarios where it's actually in the plaster and it all needs to be removed. So, we've been doing this for years, and the contractors have been doing it even longer. So it's a very common procedure. The contractor that I used, the Detroit contractor, on my Kirby project was Go Green Contracting, and they've been doing it forever. And actually, I talked to him last week, and he talked about how much volume he's had in the city and how often he does projects.
Thanks, Richard. So Halima and then Malik, and then I know time is running, so maybe if there's just a few more comments. I know that we also have someone from Stormwater here, so I know that was something that Mr. Chapman was interested in, so go ahead.
I'll try to be as concise as possible. However, I have 5 questions. Thank you. First of all, I'm heartened to hear Mr. Kurt say that, yes, monitors can be distributed to residents along the route. Thank you so much. 2, I want to know, how do residents report violations? Thank you. I'm looking for your name, ma'am, from Eagle. You said you would provide your number, but what is the formal process? Should there be? And I hope that there isn't. I'm honest to God, I hope there isn't any type of environmental hazard created with this project. But how should residents report that? And what are the expectations after reporting? I guess number 2.
You want me to answer that right off? Because any resident can put that on our P's line. I can put that in our chat. You can call our P's line and we will immediately answer that. I will put that in the chat right now.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And what is the expectation of turnaround time on that?
In a project this large, this type of situation, they would get on it. I know my asbestos people, like I said, I have 3 of them. It would be as soon as they know about it. Okay. Unless it'd be some catastrophe that would divert them, but no, this is a large project. I imagine it would be very, very quickly.
So like 24, 48 hours?
I would say I would have no trouble. That's what I would think, yes.
Okay, because I know a lot of people have their windows open during summertime, you know? Mm-hmm. 4 or 3 rather, I understand like the wet, the enclosure, but I understand that they will be imploding part of the roof to build the atriums. And so I wonder, is that going to be like a different procedure so that dust doesn't go flying like through the roof? And then 4, from a regulatory point of view, what happens if there is violations? I know that Eagle has cited Stellantis several times for major environmental aggressions against their neighbors. What else happens? And then, 5, the common procedure, that's kind of problematic for me because unfortunately, Black and brown people are poisoned as common procedure during developments. And so I want to know, and I want to be assured that construction or transport would halt should there be a violation that's found, and it would be remediated before construction continues. And I guess that's more towards the development team.
Yeah, and I definitely already mentioned that the moment if we know of a violation, we're going to stop working. We're going to leave the filters on. We're going to continue monitoring what we're doing, but we're not going to continue to exacerbate the problem.
Thank you.
So I know there were kind of like a lot of questions in there. I'm not sure if anyone from development team or Eagle has any responses to the other ones.
Well, I think were there more questions associated with the asbestos part? If not, we jump right into the demolition that you just mentioned.
The only one that I find unanswered was from a regulatory point of view. So I think that would be for Eagle. What happens? So if should there be, and we don't anticipate nor want, but should there be a violation and, the construction is halted, then what happens from a regulator standpoint?
Okay, from a regulator standpoint, first of all, if there's anything that anybody has concern about, I put our P's number in the chat, so please note that. And that can be reported, and we would come out there very quickly, and we would issue violation notices, okay? And we would ask them to, in fact, they probably would, as already stated, would stop any issues, and we would issue a violation notice, which would have to be answered. And as they say, the games begin at that point. Then you're going into regulatory action. Nobody wants that. I don't think you want that, do you, Richard?
No, definitely not.
You're highly motivated not to have that.
And yeah. I just want to point out, sorry, Richard, not to step on your answer here, but I was the chair of the state licensing board for builders. I've been at this process for 26 years and take all of it very, very seriously. So, my company's mantra isn't to sort of look the other way or try to, create a problem or make a problem worse. If we know of a problem, we're going to be the first ones jumping in to try to fix it. So
let's just go to another aspect besides just the ethical and humanitarian aspect of it, which hopefully we all are, and I know that we all want to be. But if nothing else, whenever construction is involved, time is money. And if we halt you and you're held up for quite a number of days, that's a whole bunch of money. So that's the motivation as well. And that is a major motivator for this type of business. And I think, Kevin, you could agree on that one too. Both are very important.
Absolutely.
And so that's why we get the compliance in these type of areas, because the longer we hold construction up on something, the more deleterious it is for all concerned. So it's not only the humanitarian aspect of it, the ethical aspect, it's just the business aspect as well.
Right. Well said.
Thank you for that. So I see I have a NAC member, Shania Gary, but I don't know if Nicole Sherrod-Freeman, if you wanted to jump in on something real quick.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I just want to quickly address an important point that you made, is it Castles?
Casales.
Ms. Casales, this is obvious, I'm sure, to everybody on the call, but I just got to call this. Like you made what I know to be a passionate point for you around environmental justice for Black and Brown people. And I just have to call out that to have this project taken on by developers who are not only from this city, but still live in this city, who are Black, I'm just gonna call it, if there's an environmental risk, and there is, it is of great benefit to have two people who are a development team who is in part from this city, of this city, cares deeply about this city. That counts for something. That counts for something. Thank you for that.
Okay, so I know I had Shanita Gary have your hand up. I saw your hand went down, but if you have a question or comment, wanted to. There you are. There you are.
I am here. Sorry, I was still on mute. Sorry for being late. I see that we're back on the asbestos and environmental things that we've already been over. And I just want to say, as someone who lives here directly, and I mean directly here on Harper and Bodine, I was satisfied with the answers before, and I appreciate them going over it again. And I'm not stuck there. I am satisfied, and I do trust the answers. And with the project, I do want it to move forward. We do want it to be done safely. We do want a community benefit, but I'm not here to delay anything or strong arm anybody or make anybody feel distrusted in this process on my side and the developer side. And I'm just trying to figure out how can we move past this part where it's a satisfactory answer as far as the environment or these repetitive questions. Just to make it look, I don't know. It looks like, or it seems like on our side that seems to be where some people are stuck, and I'm not. So I just wanted to put that on record. As far as me being directly impacted by this project, I don't feel a distrust or that someone's trying to harm us. And I do appreciate them taking the time to, in detail explain these same things, but I don't want to keep asking the same questions. So that's it.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Gary. And I see Malik has his hand up. And then I feel like we're coming to a close maybe on this particular point.
Yeah, sorry. Mine's not exactly directly related to the environment, so hopefully this wouldn't subtract from that time. But nonetheless, it was specifically about the response to the letter and just the previous discussion on that. I just wanted to clarify a few things, at least from my perspective, on the writing of that letter. No one, at least on the NAC, is advocating for maintaining the derelict property. I think we've heard from the community that people would like to see that developed and move forward and improve. And so everybody is working towards that end. The prompt for a lot of the things that were said in the letter were the idea that the things we had put forward were not directly responded to with things that can lead to further discussion. Some of the ideas, although weren't said no, but were said, we're talking about viability. And things of viability is hard to characterize. And well, if you say it's not viable, how not viable is it? How far off is it? How can we get it towards something that is a community benefit and still can happen? And I really appreciate the idea of not overpromising. That's very constructive and under delivering. But the idea is moving forward. What steps can we take? Even the things that aren't monetary, like the parking and the farmers market, those things would be non-monetary, but they were sort of put in that idea of non-viable because of inconvenience for tenants and whatnot. So the question is, how do we move forward on those things? And so, yeah, that's what I wanted to add as far as the whole structure of the future discussion.
Thank you, Malik. Appreciate that. I think it's a good segue. I do appreciate the in-depth discussion and expertise we brought into this particular conversation. So I thank everyone for that. I feel like questions have been answered, or at least as best as they could be in this format. I know there's been written responses previously provided to some of these things, but I think we have really covered a lot of ground. So if everyone is okay, I think maybe we could move over to some of the open items with the as far as the impacts and responses that we last left off last week. If that is all right with everyone, Malik, you kind of gave us the segue into that anyway.
I'm gonna raise my hand real quick, Aaron, and mention there were several questions about stormwater.
Oh,
and
yes.
We had brought our civil engineers on the call and wondered if that was something we should address real quick before we move on as well.
Yeah, I know Ron Chapman, that was something that you really had questions on. So maybe if you want to kick off your main question there, we can try and to do it.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Aaron. I think my big concern, and I think some of this has already been addressed in prior meetings, but it's helpful to have additional people here. My biggest concern is that it seems like there's a huge stormwater problem in the area. The residents have noticed, I've heard from other people, I've seen it myself. I understand that the plan would completely eliminate excess stormwater during storm conditions from entering into the stormwater system. And I'd certainly love to hear a little bit more about that, about how that works and about how you can ensure that there won't be additional impact on the stormwater. And then if there is anything about this project that would also maybe make it better for the local residents, such as the fact that the site doesn't currently have any stormwater mitigation. That would be helpful to know as well.
Nick, is this something our civil engineer Nick from Manic Smith is on the call? Do you want to start?
Yeah, absolutely, Kevin. Can you confirm that you guys can hear me?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you.
Good to see you.
Awesome. As Richard said at the beginning, my name is Nick D. Sampler. I work for Manic Smith Group, the civil engineering consultant for the project. And Mr. Chapman, I can certainly answer that question or start the discussion on it. So the site stormwater system, just general components of it, there's 3 different lots, as I'm sure you guys know, and each one of those lots will have a separate stormwater system, and there'll be a storm sewer and catch basins. Catch basins are, in very simple terms, the grates you see on the streets or in parking lots that will collect the water. It'll take it down into a sewer pipe, and those sewer pipes will go to a detention system on each of the lots. And what a detention system is it's a big holding tank. And in our case, there'll be an underground system, that holds onto the water from the site and slowly releases it at a controlled rate to the DWSD combined sewer. And there's many regulations in terms of the sizing and requirements for those systems. And I know Sarah Stuhlmiller is on from DWSD and can certainly discuss those more. But in simple terms, that's what the system is designed to do. And as far as I'm aware, and I think Mr. Chapman, you said this as well, currently there's no stormwater mitigation features on the site. And so the systems that are built as part of this project will certainly reduce the peak rate of water discharging into the combined sewer. And as I'm sure most of you know, the combined sewer goes to a sewage treatment plant and is treated. And the main issue with that system is that during large rainfall events, the sewage treatment plant gets overloaded and can't keep up with the amount of water coming in. So that's the whole purpose of the regulations made by DWSD, is to limit the rate at which water can leave the site during flooding events. And that will certainly be a part of this project and will certainly reduce the peak volume of water entering into the DWSD system. So I think that, to answer another part of your question, Mr. Chapman, about community good, certainly anytime you can reduce the volume of water going into that system, that is a positive. And DWSD can speak about that more. I can't promise you that this project individually will have a massive impact on a much larger issue that many communities are facing right now with more increased rainfall events, more intense events. But over time, the regulations by DWSD will make a difference to slowing the peak rate of water going into their sewage treatment plants and reduce the likelihood of a sewage overflow. So I think that can start the discussion. I certainly take any follow-ups.
No, that's wonderful. And we certainly do appreciate the community benefit that is already being granted by the stormwater mitigation that you plan to do. Thank you.
Just to echo everything he said was absolutely correct. This is Sarah with the Water Department, by the way. Just as he said, we have standards and specifications for designers for projects like this to follow. And it's called the Post-Construction Stormwater Management Ordinance. So if you guys were here a couple weeks ago when I spoke, I gave a little insight on that. So we have local regulations that requires private development to manage their stormwater, and then DWSD has regulation from the state that requires us to manage stormwater. So from both fronts, we're making sure that private development and the public development are managing stormwater. So just as Nick said, that, obviously one project isn't going to solve the whole state's problems, but it's piece by piece, it's coming together. And this is a large project that's definitely going to take a lot of stormwater out of the system and relieve at least the sewers in the local area, at least for a few hours after a very large rainstorm. For sure.
Great, thank you so much. Did that kind of get into enough on the stormwater that people wanted to know? So I want to really thank the representatives from Eagle, from DWSD, from DSEED, and developers, environmental consultants. You're obviously free to stay on. I do see one hand up, Alima, so this will be the last question on this topic, I think.
One more question. Does Eagle or the environmental folks look at potential rat infestation or, just rodents disturbed during the process of construction, or is that another body?
Have you contacted the city health department about that?
Okay.
City health department.
Yeah, Detroit has its own health department back again, and so yeah, I would definitely contact them about that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure.
And speaking on behalf of the city, BC, environmental enforcement does do baiting for rats. So if you are having any issues with rats, you can submit a ticket through Improve Detroit, and our environmental enforcement inspectors will come out and bait for rodents, as well as inspect and I believe replace the traps on a weekly basis until rodents are taken care of.
Okay. Thank you, Malik.
Thank you.
Thank you all for that discussion. I think there was a lot of great information shared and really, really valuable. So I know it took a little longer than we expected, but I'm glad we were able to get all those questions answered. So at this point, and obviously everyone's free to stay on the meeting if you like, but for the environmental consultants or folks, we again thank you for your participation. At this point, I think we need to move on to addressing the impact list requests, some of the open items. And I'm just going to bring up a slide. So very specifically, I think, there were a lot of things, and we'll go through line, through the actual list. I first want to acknowledge there were a lot of items in the list that the developer did say yes to. And so I definitely want to acknowledge that, but there are some open items where we want to give the opportunity to the development team to, kind of explain, why they didn't necessarily say yes, or, explain where they're coming from on specific things and get into more detail on what they intend. And we may be able to provide some greater context in some of those items from some city staff as well. So, but certainly the things that we saw where there were things that needed to be kind of drilled down onto more were around affordable housing units, the community investment, workforce and wages, and the building design and public spaces. So with that, I would like to, I think, hand it over to Richard at this point. And if it's helpful, would it make sense for me to bring up the actual spreadsheet list? Richard, is that?
That can be my kind of agenda showed that I think HRD and DGC wanted to speak first. Is that accurate?
Okay, possibly. Is that Luke or my colleagues from the city? Is that the plan?
No, I think that works just as well. If it works for you, Richard, however you'd like to proceed.
Yeah, that was my understanding, but we could go either way.
No, sure. So I'll say just a word here, and then I'll hand it off to David Howell. I think the reason we wanted to go first is to root the conversation to follow around the affordable units and some of the presentations that this body's already seen around the project financing, and sort of arm the discussion to follow with the appropriate context around what the project financing sort of is and how it works, and what it can and cannot accommodate to the extent of an affordability component. So with that, I'll hand it off to David Howell, who is the expert on these matters. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Luke. I appreciate that. Aaron, would you mind bringing up that slide? Yep. Perfect. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Again, for those of you who don't know me, my name's David Howell. I'm the Director of Real Estate with DGC, and had been charged with the responsibility of underwriting this project to determine if, in fact, it warranted assistance through property tax abatements, and worked in concert with my colleague, Brian Vosberg, who's with DEBRA, as Brian oversees the tax increment financing. So what you have in front of you, you've seen a version of it in the but-for analysis that we have shared with the NAC. And I'll go through this with you in an expeditious manner, but thoroughly, such that we could advance the discussion. So on the left-hand side, you see what is commonly known as a capital stack, and is the sources of capital that have been provided to us by the developer. And it contemplates all of the affordable units at 80% AMI. And I'll start from in just for a little background, we at DEGC go through a rigorous and exhaustive analysis of the entire financial model, which contemplates toggling back and forth with the developer to ensure all of the developer's assumptions are acceptable to us. For instance, the revenue projections, the expense projections. We test, if you will, the financial model through with a number of metrics that we use to ensure that we do not over-incentivize this project. In other words, we make sure that the project, but for the abatement, and in some cases the TIF, which is applicable here, but for those incentives, the project would not move forward. So on the left-hand side, you see senior bank debt in the amount of $72,500,000. What is in yellow is what is commonly referred to as the financing gap. And I'll go over, it's about 41% of the capital stack, which is not common for a project of this size, of this magnitude, and that has the high environmental remediation cost. So you've got cash equity of $10.6 million and $72.5 million of debt. The rest of the cost, again, is mitigated by soft debt, state, federal loans, deferred developer fee, and historic tax credits. So about 41% of the capital stack has to be mitigated through alternative sources. One of the commonly used, or I should say most widely used metrics that we test with is called the debt coverage ratio. And essentially the debt coverage ratio is the ratio of income to debt. So you'll see here, you have a 1.1 times debt coverage ratio. And what that means is there's $1.11 of income for every dollar of debt. And Traditionally, you'll see banks and financing institutions, institutions like DGC, not want to finance a project, that's 110 or below. Without the abatement or the TIF, you've got a 0.94 debt coverage ratio, which means there's 94 cents of income for every dollar of debt. So there's no way this project could get financed without the TIF and without the tax abatement. And then this is at 80% AMI. So one of the things that the NAC has suggested was that all 24 or all 20% of the units be at 50% AMI. So what we did at DEGC is we ran the numbers and created a financial model with all of the affordable units at 50% AMI. And what that did is create an additional gap of $4.5 million and decreased the income, or the NOI, which stands for net operating income, $344,000 in the first year. So if in fact the developer came to DGC and said, I'd like to have this project financed, or I'd like to apply for a tax abatement, and all of the units are at 50% AMI, with this $4.5 million gap, we would not approve, we wouldn't approve the tax abatement. Because essentially the developer has to come up with $4.5 million that has no debt service associated with it, no strings attached, no provisions that $4.5 million would have to be paid back. So it's not, I'm just being candid, it's not that the developer does not want affordable units in the project. This illustrates that the project will not move forward with the level of affordable units the NAC has requested. So I'll stop there for questions.
Okay. And I see, I'm going to ask, and remember, please put on your video when you talk, but I see NAC member Malik Wali. We'll go then, and then Ms. Gary after that.
Great. Thank you very much, David. That's really, that adds a lot of context. Wanted to ask, at the bottom of the slide with the 50% AMI, it shows the DCR with the tax abatement and the TIF is still 1.1. So does that suggest with the reduced AMI units, the DCR is unchanged?
Only if the developer were to find $4.5 million that they didn't have to pay back, Malik. I've been doing this 26 years, and grants at that size do not exist. If they did, there'd be a lot more development happening in this city. So the 1.1 suggests if the developer, if all of the units were at 50% AMI and the developer were able to secure $4.5 million to pay for that it did not have to pay back, we could, the debt coverage ratio would be 1.10, because as you see, the loan amount decreases from 72.5 million to 68 million, the senior debt. And that's because there's $344,000 less of income to service the debt. So you've got to shrink, if you will, or decrease the senior bank by $4.5 million to get that 1.1 debt coverage.
David, if I may jump in and provide some perspective from the Housing and Revitalization Department. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Kelly Vickers. I work in HRD. I'm the Chief Housing Development and Investment Officer. I haven't looked deeply at David's analysis up until this point, but I think it looks right on, except for one thing that I'm going to mention, and that is the source of funding that we would have to use to fill a $4.5 million gap is federally sourced, and that would trigger all of the federal cross-cutting regulations, which would put a lot of strain on the development process and increase the costs, in our experience, up to 20%. So I think 20% of 142 million ends up being a much larger gap than what you can fill with federal sources in this case. But I wanted to also just sort of step back and give maybe a little bit of a broader perspective. So, for us, we are very much striving to produce affordable housing at all income levels throughout the city of Detroit. That is our main mission, and that is my primary responsibility, is to produce affordable housing. But that also includes units at the at all income levels. So even the 80% AMI units that are being proposed here, I think there is a need in this neighborhood for those units and for the market rate units alike. I think by adding those units into this area, it will not only provide a release valve and some downward pressure on rents in the short and medium term, but it also adds diversity to the mixture of units that are available currently in the area. So we were looking at some stats earlier this afternoon, and of the 26,000 or 27,000 units that we track in the city of Detroit, 14,000 of those are located within a 2 miles of this site. And of those 14,000 restricted units, 12,000 of those are at 60% AMI or below. So the vast majority of the units that are restricted in this area are more deeply restricted. And, we actually think that there is a need and that it is a good policy outcome to add some 80% units to this area. In fact, I remember having a conversation with a developer a few years ago, much smaller, less impactful than this development, but they were proposing 100% affordable, and we actually had to push back in order to get a more mixed income approach to introduce, some unrestricted market rate units to this neighborhood, because that's really critical for the long-term viability and revitalization, of the whole neighborhood. And I think what we have here is an opportunity for a very large and very important building to this area, which currently is detracting from it, to become, a source of pride and beauty that will actually make it easier in the future to place investments that produce, more deeply affordable units in this area. And that sort of leads me into my next point about sort of the approach to building affordable housing. There's essentially two major paths because it does take pretty deep subsidy in order to make them pencil out financially. And the first and most powerful tool is the 9% low-income housing tax credit, which in this case, I don't think anyone would look at this building as an obvious target for that sort of investment. The way that the state allocates these tax credits currently sort of disadvantages that in a couple of ways. One, they're looking for much smaller targeted investments to spread out across the state more evenly, and that's actually been true for several years. I think if you look back at their allocations over, probably the last 10 years or more, most of those developments are in the 45 to 60 unit range. And so, the building as a whole, clearly much larger than that. But even speaking of just 20% of the units at, 87 units, you're still significantly higher than what is typically financeable through that structure. But it's also, it's a very limited and competitive process. And MSHDA has in its current allocation plan created strong incentives to develop these units in areas where there is already market strength. And so they don't want to really be the leading investment in an area that's being revitalized. That's difficult for us to plan a revitalization strategy around, but we have to work with the allocation plan that we have, not the one that we wish we had. So I think a couple of things are true, though. By getting this building online and inhabited, it not only creates that downward pressure and that release valve that, by adding those units and having a place for folks at those income levels to go, they're not displacing other folks from the neighborhood. That's a positive outcome. You have an attractive building that adds to the neighborhood instead of detracts from it, and then it becomes an attractive place for targeted investments of those tax credits that MSHDA allocates in future rounds. Because now you've sort of proven the market, and you've proven that that this is an area that folks of all income levels want to live, and those are the areas that MSHDA is looking for those tax credit investments to go to. The other sort of way that we typically see affordable units get developed is by sort of stitching together a Frankenstein's monster of subsidies from various sources at the local level, state level, federal level. And, that's a very, very difficult approach. We do have projects in our portfolio where we've taken that approach, none that approximate the scale of this development, though. And I think it's something that has to be taken with a very deliberate mindset from the very beginning in order to make it work, because you have to, every design decision and every program decision has to be made with the thought in mind that you're going to comply with like 7 different sets of regulations. And then you're going to apply for all these different competitive financing sources and make them work and line up together so that you can close and build and reconstruct this successfully. I think it would be a very, very difficult process that would put this project back, several years, whereas it could be, in a much shorter turnaround time, put to productive use, improving the neighborhood and making it a good target for future investment of affordable housing.
Thank you for that context. That's helpful. That's, to be honest with you, that's a lot of what you said about the presence of affordable housing in the area already is a bit contrary to what I've heard so far from the community. So yeah, that's news information to me. My challenge for the developer and the DEGC with this is, if the 50% AMI is, as you've shown, is not viable in this way, what is viable? If is 80% the very best that can be afforded, or is there something of 70% or 75%? It would seem strange that a round number is the optimized value for creating the most affordable housing for the community in the neighborhood with this project.
Thank you, Malik. I don't know if Richard, if you want to respond to that now, if you want to go to other questions and kind of have a more overall response.
So I ideally, I like to kind of get in there and have the response so that, make sure I heard correctly, make sure that that I'm not losing anything. So unless it's holding something up, I'd like to respond to the question right away.
No, yeah, please take your time. I'd appreciate it. A thoughtful response, but more than a quick.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Okay. So we'll kind of put it all together and lay it out. But our first concept was complying with the ordinance and saying, obviously we're going to have the 80%, and then it was how many. So you lose revenue on each unit that you add, and as they get bigger. So you lose more on a 1-bedroom, you lose more on a 2-bedroom, and so our understanding coming into the process, was that the big push was to have as many 2 bedrooms and 1 bedrooms as possible instead of just all studios, to have that diversity. And that's where we focused on dollar by dollar, how much to be able to reduce the income of the property and by having more 2 bedrooms and more 1 bedrooms. And so that was our focus in an attempt to, as opposed to going down, thinking in terms of going down on the AMI, instead providing larger units and larger losses at that 80% AMI in compliance with the ordinance, but also with a nod towards, okay, how do we figure out how much we can kind of reduce revenue here? And so that was just always our thought process, our position, and so we had maxed out the losses there, and felt like, ta-da! Look, we did a good job. We're half of our 2 bedrooms are at this 80%, and so that was our thought process, and figuring out another configuration. We definitely want to have that conversation, figure out kind of where you guys are. I always wanted to make sure that because 80% AMI is talked about as being this above Detroiter level, to lay out that, that's a single person making $50,000 or a family of 4 making $71,600 as a household. And so that's, two adults, each making, say, $18 an hour, and 2 kids. And so really getting a feel for if that was really not evident in this neighborhood. And a lot of people actually who would be living here right now in this neighborhood, right in that area of income, being the people who are interested in this type of property. And so we want to have that conversation. We want to give it some deep thought, but I did want to tell you kind of our mindset going into this, to try to achieve a good faith effort.
Thank you. Yeah, that's good to hear.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask Ms. Derry, I know you had your hand up. If you can please put your camera on, that would be appreciated.
Okay. I would like to speak to what all 3 people just said, Kelly, Malik, and David. So thank you for giving the analysis for the loans make sense. As a previous loan officer, a loan processor, you have to make it make sense to be able to get the loan. So I appreciate David saying that they can go back and see if 75 or 70 something works. That shows that you are considering, and you respect our input, and we'll come back to the numbers. If it works, great. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But also, I agree, everything can't be 100% affordable housing, because we want to attract well-established business to come here. So like I said before, I don't have to leave my city to go shopping for basic necessity, clothes or things like that. So I get it. It makes sense. And that's why I really want to see the project work. I do believe that people, 2 people can make that income to make that work, but would they want to live in a 2-bedroom apartment? That would be their choice. We will see. I just want to see that you're looking at it and you're giving us something in writing that we can see. And hopefully all this does work. But like I said, I get it. Like, if I was a business target or something like that, I would want to move somewhere where it's thriving. So yes, we don't want to go backwards. We don't want to have, everything where, no one can afford it, or we're giving everything away free. But to be fair, we have to see what works for those that we're asking for, maybe a couple more affordable housing. And I also wanted to say from the beginning, when we were talking about going on the rooftops and swimming pools and all those type of things, if I lived there, I wouldn't be happy with that situation because that's invading like personal space where these people will live. So a community benefit that's not directly impacting the new residents, that would make sense. That's a reality, that's something realistic for me. And I think that was it. So, just keep showing us things in writing where we don't have to guess or, go dig up these things in the back end. Black and white usually tells the truth.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Gary.
Thank you.
And I see Ms. Casal's hand is up now, so we'll call on you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Let's see. So I have a lot of questions because I feel like this might be our last opportunity to ask questions since we're looking at coming to a finalized agreement within the next meeting. And so let me see. First of all, I think these are for the DEGC. Let me start there. I noticed that you said in your response if all the units were at 50% AMI, and I was wondering if you meant all 20% or all the units so that we're not comparing apples to oranges as if it would be unviable. Also, I noticed that you, Mr. Howell, stated that there is a rigorous and exhaustive financial modeling with a number of metrics. We've asked for some insight into this process, and to date, we've gotten nothing besides the slides that were provided on the May 3rd, I believe, meeting. So if you could give us any insight into those rigorous and exhaustive financial models, that would be very much appreciated. And then I want to know, maybe this is to the developer, because we understand the Oprah, we understand the TIF, we understand the Detroit City tax abatements and incentives, but are there other public funds that you all are going for, perhaps on a state level, perhaps on a federal level, perhaps earmarked for specific things like federal monies for construction that don't apply to the whole project, but that do impact your bottom line? And then also, it looks like this project may be near an opportunity zone, and we want to know, how does the location impact investment and tax advantages, and if there's anything else associated with that being near an opportunity zone. And then I have some more questions, but I'll put a pause on it.
Yeah, no, let's put a pause on that because I think there's 4 questions there, and I'll let David go first.
Sure. Thank you. It's not all of the units at 50%, it's 20% of the units at 50%. So that's the answer to your first question. The second question is, what I said was we do a rigorous and exhaustive analysis of the financial model presented to us by the developer. And part of that analysis is we do our own tax projections. I indicated we look at debt coverage ratio, which is probably the most widely used metric. Other metrics we benchmark against our internal rate of return, cash on cash returns, yield on cost, and some other qualitative analysis we do to ensure, like, the building, it checks a box if in fact the building is vacant, right? Or in the case of this project, it's city-owned land that will be sold. So one of the positives we look at is as soon as title is transferred over to the developer, the property goes on the tax rolls. And when I presented the net benefit analysis, I think over a 15-year period, we're looking at about $8 million in property taxes that will be collected, over a 15-year period, notwithstanding the tax abatement. So those are I hope, and if you'd like offline, I think it'd take a long time for me to explain what internal rate of return is, and what yield on cost is, what cash on cash returns are. So offline, I can, go over those metrics with you. But the most widely used is debt coverage ratio.
Wow. Okay. I thank you so much for that. And I do know that you have a very unique expertise. And we were just asking for the documents as the NAC to be able to have this further level of qualitative analysis that you spoke about. And so, yeah, I love to talk to you offline. I did send an email after the Brownfield hearing yesterday. I'm not sure if you got it, but I would, yes?
I did receive it, and
okay.
Got a chance to answer 4 of the 5 questions. So I've got one more question to answer, and then I'll send all the answers back. But
okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
So I do have a few other questions, actually.
So you had some questions for the developer you asked.
And so the two that I remember, and please let me know if I missed something, is first, were there any state or federal fundings going towards
in addition to?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Sorry. In addition to, and so there's a state program called the Michigan Community Revitalization Program that people just call CRP. It's a replacement for the Brownfield tax credit, and we are applying to that program. Sorry, can you hear me?
Did you say a replacement?
Yes. So in 2011, the Brownfield tax credit, as differentiated between from the Brownfield TIF program and the state historic tax credit, were wiped out, and the replacement program was this program that's designed to be at the table with the developers, evaluating return and making sure that the project's not over incentivized. And so we're applying to that program and hoping to achieve $10 million. The program only allows for $1.5 million to be grant, and the rest has to be evaluated loan or equity or something along those lines. But generally, I've seen loan, interest rate being determined and the payback period being determined. So we're applying for that at the state. There's also a program that's associated with the I guess the ARPA dollars, or I believe, is called the Revitalization and Placemaking Program, and that program allows for up to $5 million. The CRP cap is $10 million, and so we've applied for that as well, and that'll be evaluated. One of the things is that because this project is so large, it gets capped out prior to what the percentage would normally be on an equivalent project, say 1/5 the size or something along those lines. And so we know we're going to be capped out, and it's going to be a shallower subsidy, but we're applying for those. The federal historic tax credit is something a little different, but I wouldn't want to not call it a federal benefit, because while the dollars actually come from a bank or insurance company and come into the project as equity, they are actually doing that in relation to a federal benefit that they receive when you rehab a historic building to National Park Service standards. And so that was that federal historic tax credit. And then there's a much smaller state historic tax credit that has been put back in place just in, I believe at the end of 2020, and this may be actually the first year that the regulations have been out and they're able to actually send it out. And so that allows for large projects to get up to $2 million. But we've assumed that there's no way that we're going to take the whole state's $2 million. And so we've assumed that at best we would get $1 million. So all those were actually in the lumped in with the things that David showed as the grants and loans being applied for. And so sorry.
Thank you. Sorry.
I was just I wanted to make sure that that I didn't blow through it too fast, but then also get to the opportunity zone question. And so it's so the opportunity zone is so my understanding is that the project is indeed an opportunity zone, and then each partner looks at their individual scenario and weighs in as to whether there is a benefit for them trying to proceed with that. There's also, and the reason why I'll need to get back to you, I haven't even considered it because you have to have capital gains, and I don't have any because everything I've done in the last 10 years has gone into real estate. And so there's, but also there's some time limits, some of which have already passed and some of which are coming up that may make it where, although this is an opportunity zone, we may be past that time to even do so. But so my expectation is that it won't be something taken advantage of. But we haven't delved into that because we've just been going towards getting the project done.
Gotcha. So per your expectation, above the 41 million coming from Detroit City tax abatements and OPRA and brownfield credits, what's the total amount of public funding, state and federal, that you all are expecting or seeking?
Budget. And so just to be like clear, because I'm always trying to be as exact as possible, the what we'll actually be able to borrow against that TIF that actually get that repayment stream that comes back is actually a much lower number than the 23 million or 24 million that's set at. We're actually projecting that to be a maximum of 13 million. But in terms of the actual dollars in the budget, then the federal historic tax credit is about $23 million, and the state historic, if we're able to get it, we're showing 900,000 because it gets monetized at 90 cents on the dollar, and then the two state funds, if we were to get it, would be another $15 million.
So this brings me back to the point of the letter from the NAC. It seems that you're getting significant public input, and it's kind of reminiscent of that Chitlin Circuit era where you can play here but you can't stay here. So at very least, I would implore your team to be able to think about how 50% AMI could be workable so that Detroiters could actually inhabit the building for that 15-year period, should they choose.
So this is why, so thank you. And I appreciate the concept, and we will be taking a look at that. But I want to make sure that it's clear that incentive isn't giveaway, it's offset. And so in a scenario where someone says, hey, is it desirable to rehab historic buildings as opposed to tear them down? There was a decision at the federal level that said, yes, there is. However, we expect that it's going to be more expensive to do so. And to help offset that additional expense, then we're going to set up this 20% federal historic tax credit. And so then at the state level, they said, is it less economically viable to develop in a new revitalization area than to go out and develop in than Birmingham or Royal Oak? And so they say, yes, but we're going to measure and see how much less, and that will be the amount that's associated with the subsidy. So that's where David speaks about the but for. So these aren't, hey, if you do this and come make this money, we'll give you all this extra money. The concept behind each of these incentives is, if you did this, you were going to make significantly less money because it's more expensive for the same amount of rent. And therefore, we're putting together a program that offsets that loss. And so in terms of apples to apples economics, then there's not this windfall, there's not this gain. And so in terms of the public participation is to offset the losses that would make a developer no otherwise not do this. And so that's the concept of the buffer.
Definitely got that. And I know somebody brought this up earlier. As a Detroiter, you understand this perhaps better than any other developer that has gone through this process. The valuation of the je ne sais quoi of Detroit. Go build in Birmingham. Nobody in the world knows where Birmingham is, and nobody cares. Everybody in the world knows where Detroit is. You know why? Because of the je ne sais quoi. We are creative geniuses. We have everything and have been taken for granted for decades, if not centuries, right? And so I think to not have any sort of valuation about the location, like what does this building mean? How many raves have happened in this building, right? Like how much graffiti is in this building? Where does it sit at the intersection of the oldest Black architect in the state of Michigan? Like there's so much that surrounds the context of this building. And I do want my brothers to win. I do want a Black development team that is looking out for Black contractors and looking out for the neighborhood 100%. But guess what? I cannot condone something that excludes the neighborhood nor puts the neighborhood at risk. And so I think with all of the millions of dollars that you're garnering from the public and your specific, someone told me you were a financial wizard. They literally described you that way. I think that you can figure out how can we really make this a win-win. And I hope you do understand where I'm coming from in terms of not poisoning folks and affordability. Other folks on the NAC has there's a ton of ideas that were presented to you. And so we're very curious to find out what your team has come up with. But I think affordability in this space is definitely a linchpin. And in 48202, the zip code per the 2020 census is much below the average of Detroit. So the median income of Detroit is $33,000, where the AMI is more like 62, and 48202 is about 21,000. And so just putting that on the table, again, I congratulate your team for thinking through the minority contracting piece and the umbrella bonding and how can you make it more, how can you make it, how can you have as many Detroit-based contractors on the job as possible? And there's several other things, but I think the affordability piece is something that you guys need to look at.
Thank you, Halima. I'm going to move on. I see Shanita has got her hand up, and I know we have other issues to still talk about, so I want to definitely keep this conversation moving. So Ms. Gary, and if there's other Ms. Gary, go ahead.
I just want to say to the developers and everybody on here, the NAC is not one person. To me, those are her personal feelings. And he's already stated they're going to look at the numbers. 50% isn't going to work for the loan. So let's not beat a dead horse. And let's consider everybody's opinion, not just one person saying they're representing the NAC. So yes, I don't want to see graffiti anymore. And if they don't do this project, what's our alternative? Like I said, I live right here. She lives, I don't know, on, further out, but I know what I want to see. We know what we like here. So we can't let one person on the next speak for everybody.
Okay. Susan Robertson, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm a little tired, but I have been quiet. This is not my first development that I had to sit through, nor be in the front of deciding, what goes in a community. Okay, but we can go over this all day. We need to come together to figure out what community benefits we can get from this development. That's it. Okay, we can sit and talk about everything. Until we turn blue. We need to come together and we need to come up with some type of community benefits that works for everybody. Like like Shanita said, as well as Halima. Like, I can't keep going over the same thing. What can we, as the developer, can you give us reply? Say something like, if this doesn't work, what works? So we can move forward. Because I can't. I just can't, guys, and I hate to sound like this, but we need to sit down and come up with some type of community benefits. What benefits the community? I keep hearing all these numbers thrown out, what we're doing, what's, being given, but what is going to benefit the community? That's it. I think initially, that's what I stated. I'm here for the community. The community has to benefit from this development, regardless. So we can sit here and talk to 500 representatives. Again, what is going to benefit the community? How do we move forward? That's where I'm at, okay?
So thank you. So I appreciate that. And I wanted to, I always want to make sure everyone's heard and I'm addressing every question. And so, but in terms of specifically to the affordable, in the context of what David showed, kind of setting up something that shows how to maintain that same economic place at different levels of affordability and units. And so it's going to be kind of a mathematical schedule to show such that the NAC can say, hey, where are we more focused? What are we looking for? And then we can kind of figure out is that going to fly with City Council as well, in terms of the direct benefit. And so we want to get that to you. But we the hard part from our side has been the back and forth instead of the dialogue. So I'm enjoying the dialogue where we sit down and say, hey, seriously, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want? How do and we come to these solutions instead of just saying, hey, we want this, and be like, oh, we can't give that. And so, because we need to have some understanding of how to get to the solution. So I'm 100% down with that. And so, I think the community investment, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I want, when you say the community benefit, is that kind of what you're thinking in terms of that piece, or just the overall? Because when we hear community benefit, we think removing the blight and all that type of stuff. But I wanted to make sure I understood exactly what
I'm sorry for cutting you. I mean, overall, like, let's come up with something, because that's what we're here to do. We're here to work with you, the developers, right, to come up with something, because you want this building, right, to put this development. But we need to sit down and we need to say, okay, how can we make the community better? I mean, putting a building there, yeah, it's going to bring people, it's going to bring, stuff, yeah. How does it benefit the people outside of the community? The people that can't stay there, okay, but we're still in the same area of the development. You see what I'm saying? So how can you have businesses here? Like, I know you have mentioned co-working space, which really wouldn't work because you have Seed Detroit and you have Chroma right there. So what else can we, like, I know Miss Shanita said, like a grocery store, market, something. We need to sit down and come up with what can help the community. I don't care. I'm not talking about donate to a local art, a museum, or nothing like that. I mean, really, no.
So this is wonderful, because this is what we were trying to get to, because we didn't know what was the priorities. We thinking the community is all about the jobs. How do we get Black and brown people on the site? And so that's where we were super focused, understanding exactly what the benefit, so we could be direct to the neighborhood. Because then we thought, okay, we know we can't give up 10% of this deal. It's already thin enough. How do we get some money and give it to these not-for-profits, the local impact? But then still, we'd rather hear from y'all where should it be going, and say, okay, this is where it is. But it sounds like you also have a different idea, and that's what I want to hear. So it just be a conversation. We come to the solution.
Well, no, we still want the local jobs. No, let me stop you from that. That is very important. But you know what I'm saying? But
I'm saying that was already on the table from the beginning. So we came in, we got this huge benefit. We're about to show people what can really be done here in this city. But in terms of, but in terms of the direct impact, besides removing the building, besides the blight, besides the revitalization, I want to hear kind of an idea that you're thinking of that says what means direct community benefits you. Because what we heard was, put 10% of the profit in, and we're like, okay, we can't get there. What is there? How do we support the things that are a direct community benefit, and hearing from each of the NAC members? And so hearing what benefit pops in your mind, it gives us a real starting point, because we were just trying to figure out how to put some money in a pot and say, you all determine which impactful not-for-profits to give it to.
Well, like for instance, the last development that I was, the project that I was a part of, the developers came up with a small business fund for all the small business owners in the area. I think I forgot the amount, but anyway, they created that. They also, I can't remember, it's been a while, but they were going to go around and repair some of the homes that was in the area, like the roofs, like maybe someone's roof is, caving in. I don't know, but in a certain, I'm trying to get everything together. But anyway, it was like benefits like that, like helping like local, homeowners and small businesses and stuff like that that's in the area. That was just to throw out a couple, you know what I'm saying? So, just moving forward like that, like we have to come up, like we can sit here and talk about this all day. Yes, we need this information, and I'm not taking away from no one. I'm just saying, can we move forward, because we're still at the same.
That's absolutely what we want to do. We want to kind of value each one and say, okay, what's the number and where does it go? Is the, we were thinking, okay, the discount, we know that has a value, but this is for people moving in a building. What about people not moving in a building? And kind of getting to something that says, what is that number, and how do we get that out there? Our presumption was that the NAC would say, this is where the money would go, and we'd say, okay, this is what we can squeeze out of this, and this is what we can talk to the city about adding on or whatever, however that goes. But we needed to get some understanding, and so this is where the conversation works so much better than just the back and forth emailing, because all we saw was 10%. It was like, it ain't gonna work. But we let us, like you said, there was another project they put together a fund. Is that number, $100,000? What is that number that says, because we feel like the NAC would best make the difference on where the money should go, whether it should be fixing roofs or whether it should be going to a farm or like you said, a museum or wherever, right? And so, but and we figure out, okay, what can we squeeze out and put there?
So there's a really good dialogue. Okay, so Malik's hand went down. I see Detonia Clark's hand went up. And I think we're kind of moving. So just to kind of track where the conversation is, like we've talked about the affordable housing thing. I think there was still, an ask into the developer, but we are moving into the community investment. area as well. And I think that's a good place as we try and work through some of these issues so that we can actually write down some things. So, Ms. Clark, yes.
So hi, I hear what Lynette is saying and Shanita is saying and taking in the concerns of Halima also. I feel like that we need to meet one last time. We need to refine this list. And as the developer was just saying, we can't just ask for a pot of money. We have to decide where it's going to go. We need another meeting to refine that. And I am willing to meet with the NAC members one more time. It will probably push another meeting for us to send that to the developers and have one more meeting. And I would like to hear anybody's opinion on that.
Do you want us to speak? Because I'm for that. I mean, because we need to get that done. I mean, this is the whole reason, you know. So I'm with that, with what you just said. So if everyone else on the NAC team is okay with that, I know everyone has busy schedules, but we have to still come up with something, you know. And it just can't be thrown together, or we just agree to just, oh yeah, that's cool. No, it's not. We need to get some benefits. So I'm with you on that. So
okay, can we have a vote for that? You can put your hand up. You can talk.
So just so I'm clear, you all are suggesting, so, because I think the developer probably has some responses they want to give on some of the things they didn't like just say yes on, but this sounds like the NAC also wants to meet, I'm assuming this week, between now and next Tuesday, or maybe, is that what you guys are talking about?
Yes, even if it's Zoom, I'm very flexible with that. I don't feel like everybody is in agreement with this list and that everybody feels okay with it. So I just feel like we need to meet one more time before we send that to the developer and then have a formal meeting if that's okay.
NAC members, I guess, put your hands up.
I'm totally available. So if it extends beyond the 14th, I'm going out of town, so I won't be available to meet on like the 21st or anything like that.
Yeah, I think this would be, the goal again would be to, I think, meet this week so that we can have something written with the development team. Does that make sense for you, Richard? And respond and really put a pin in all of these outstanding items. I know, you know, so I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I have a caveat with mine.
Okay.
So one thing is this schedule is a proposed schedule, and what is comfortable for us as a NAC is part of our prerogative. So if folks cannot meet, I'm much in favor of everyone on this body being able to meet and talk in a comfortable fashion and not under duress from some imposed timeline. 1, however, I'm also available to meet. And then 3, I feel like the ball is in their court. We've submitted a letter, we've asked for things. So can the development team get back to us before we start putting our heads together and spinning our wheels? Can they propose some things to us that they're able to do to meet some of the recommendations that we've put forth? That's it.
Well, I don't feel any duress in this meeting. I would agree with Halima on the point that we've written our letter, we've made our proposals, we still didn't feel the responses were sufficient, and we would like a counter by the developer before we continue to evaluate it and discuss.
Counter proposal specifically, right?
But what I don't understand, most of the things that were included in the list of suggestions, the developer has said yes to, right? So,
well, yeah, I think there were 4 kind of main items I highlighted, and I think it was on. So I think now, if I'm speaking out of turn, NAC members let me know. It sounded like there's a question about the affordable housing. We've had a lot of discussion about that. There's a question about the community investment. We've had some discussion about that. I think the other things maybe were, I think just some refinement on some other things around maybe the design of the building or parking lots or something like that. And I think there's some other things that are more just firming up kind of specifics around those agreements, which I agree we will need for the agreement. Did I miss anything?
Aaron, am I correct in saying that most of us that are over here or live in the area, the majority are renters, right? We're not like on the other side, homeowners and things like that, right? Because
I believe the vast majority, right next to the project, are all are rentals.
Yeah, so I wanted to say, while we're thinking about solutions or what we want the community benefit to be, let's be realistic that we're renters. So we don't want or need roofs. We don't need any of those things because that's already taken care of for us. So, and I thought just remember that we're renters. And I'm okay and I'm happy being a renter, but let's ask for something that's going to make sense and really be a community benefit. And yes, I'm stuck on the market because you guys showed me that in the first flyer, so that's why I'm stuck there. But that definitely will be a community benefit. A great one.
Okay. So,
is there anything wrong with like the 4 outstanding points just being kind of hashed out now or discussed now?
I really don't have time. I can speak for myself. I really don't have time because it's 8:12. I've been up since 4:15 this morning. So, I'm like, this is good right now, but I know it's going to run a little bit over.
I'm with Zalima. I think some of the things that we discussed should be went over with the neck again. Some of the issues haven't been addressed. And I think we need to get back in our own forum and during that time that you guys should draft something up of what you're offering the community. Let us know what direct food banks that you're willing to contribute to. Something. Give us something instead of we just keep coming to the table and then it's back and forth. But it like you said, it does have to be a community benefit for this.
So we're going to make sure that we meet amongst our partners. Get y'all some initial answers out tomorrow, so that you all can definitely be on it. I'm still always torn on saying, hey, I want to give this to the food bank as opposed to, hey, we want to put together a pot of $100,000 and the NAC decide where that goes. And so I have something I heard about recently is this not-for-profit who's training people in tech, and that sounds sweet to me. And my little brother went through something like that back in the day. But this is for the NAC, right? Y'all live here, y'all in the impact area. Me saying, hey, this is what I like. That doesn't feel like it just feels like a non-starter. If y'all happen to like something that I like, then that's nice too. But I want to say, here's a pot of money that we can put together and y'all decide where it's going.
Yeah, not to speak for everyone, but I think we would welcome some proposals.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. We need something in writing, to solidify what you guys are telling us. So some of your proposals, we can go through what you have on your list. We can figure out what's good for us in the community, and then we can break it down. And then if we see something that's not that we don't see in your list, then we can add on. But we need something coming from you guys as well, Mr. Hosey.
Okay.
So I think John, hand up.
Yeah, I just want to add that I think we could have saved a lot of time if you would have if your pro forma is so tight and you're not able to allocate a lot of resources towards a community benefit that we have requested as a community of people, you should have come to us with the dollar amount and said we can reasonably budget XYZ over X period of time. And we could have met intelligently and utilized our time to say, okay, great, within that budget, we think we can accomplish this and this and this. But we have no idea what we're working with here in terms of numbers. All we know is the construction budget, which is a very big number. So please, in your proposal back to us, tell us some figures. We can 200,000 here, 100,000 there, monthly, yearly. Give us something. Yes, no is not enough. That's all I have to say.
That's a great point. Okay. And actually, I'm happy that I'm unmuted because I said a couple of things and realized I was muted. But I do think that the NAC, we do need to meet again to strengthen what we are asking for on the developer side. They can be strengthening their proposal, what they're willing to give, and then we can meet again.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is I think that the development team, you're going to have some written proposals. You sound like you're going to meet tomorrow, that we can then send the NAC, and the NAC can meet by the end of the week and discuss so that we can all come back together a week from today and understand each other. Is that right? What I'm hearing from everybody?
Yes.
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, hardcore like numbers. We need to get to the bottom line here of what's possible, what's not. In terms of redesign, which is something I feel passionate about, I do think the parking lot can be improved. The NAC has decided we do not want another Whole Foods parking lot, and every single person on this Zoom knows what I'm talking about. And those curb cuts are at 90-degree angles, and I know what it's like to drive my car around that in a tight parking lot. We don't want a parking lot like that at Fisher Body Plant 21. We want something that flows better, is safer for pedestrians, and looks better, because if I'm parking up against a curb cut and you've got a pretty landscape drawn in plan, guess what? That landscape hardly gets maintained, at least at Whole Foods, and I'm walking into a puddle as I'm getting out of my German car, and I find that very unpleasant. And
so this is super helpful because it's this conversation that gets us there, because we were hearing that the redesign was about making sure that there was a bike path through and fees.
No. We never said bike path. We said walking.
Sorry, walking path. And so this conversation where we get to how do we get to a solution, and because we were thinking we don't want a Whole Foods parking lot. We don't want something where everybody's like, I don't want to go to Whole Foods because it's going to be too tight. I can't park there. So we're thinking, how do we make sure we have enough parking spaces? How do we have it set? So
Can I give you my honest suggestion? Yep. Honestly, like I work in design all over the world, okay? I'm exposed to a million ideas a day. Mm-hmm. Try diagonal, see if you can fit, because it's very in, out, one-way traffic, one-way flow. See if it's a possibility in certain sections of the parking lot, especially in front of the market. When you have 2 lanes of traffic going where people are supposed to be walking and carrying their groceries, and as you've proposed, have a beautiful public green space between a parking lot and a market and a restaurant and a co-working space. I haven't seen that model proposed before and worked out successfully. So like as a design critic, I'm just very curious to see how is that going to work, which is why I asked for the square footage of the public space in front of between the market and the parking lot to make sure that it's actual like usable green nice public space and not just a talking point for marketing material.
So this nuance makes all the difference, this conversational style, because just reading it as saying, okay, is the walking path going through the parking lot, is getting an understanding of what these critical points from you and each other members of the NAC, but this is what we want. And I am available whenever you all meet. If there's need for more conversation, we're going to get the stuff there. But the conversation, this is what we're looking for.
Okay, yeah, because I don't think these tweaks make change or cost more money. I think they just require, specification on drawings, presented to a contractor, the people doing the form work for the curbs, like the people painting the stripes. Like it's just an idea to make, how can we take what's formulaic, but customize it to this site for everyone's benefit? And so I'm willing to volunteer after we reach a consensus to even provide more design ideas. If you'd like, I will donate my time to you.
Well, here, being able to continue the conversation could very well be helpful where, we get you with our people and sit in and say, how do we get that? How do we get that set? When the concepts and you can see the whole thing. We want it to be conversational.
Sounds really good.
That's great. So thank you all. I know we're going over time. I think this has been a very helpful dialogue and moving us forward. Even as we're kind of hurtling towards, trying to finish this up. I'm glad everyone's putting their efforts to this. Before we close out, Edwina, I know there were some people with their hands raised. I know this is a public meeting. I don't really want to keep everyone too long, but I do want to acknowledge if there's questions that are put in the chat or the Q&A or hands raised. Ms. King, maybe you can facilitate that.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you everyone for attending and for listening and for your dialogue. So we have 2 open questions in the Q&A portion before we go to the public comment. First is from Theodore Pride. Theodore states, the project falls within an opportunity zone. Are the investors using tax incentives provided for opportunity zone development? If so, what will be the potential tax reduction?
And I'll just note, I think, Richard, you did address that question. Yes.
Yeah, sure did. But just to make it clear, so I am not an opportunity zone investor. I have no capital gains to invest. That you actually have to have them. And my understanding is that the program is sunsetting on the investment timeline. It actually goes for people who already made the things. And so we don't expect to, but I'll dig in and see, and let them know. But that's never been part of the plan.
I think the other question, if I could just jump in, was also kind of spoken to in the first part of the meeting. So maybe we'll just, for card consulting, when the recording gets distributed, you can definitely check out the first hour of the meeting to hear the answer on the asbestos. But go ahead, do we want to call on?
Okay, so thank you for that. So the first hand raised is Tahira Ahmad.
We're going to keep it to no more than 1 minute.
Hello, hi, how's everybody?
Good, thank you. Go ahead.
Hear me? I'm glad. My concern is this. We've gotten all this development in Detroit, and all they are willing to do is give 20% of the housing to their project. And so if we keep getting these projects, it won't be nobody left in Detroit. Right now rent is $1,500 in some places here in Detroit. And we just got foreclosed $600 million. The city has looted us for $600 million. Thousands of homes have been illegally foreclosed. And every developer out here just want to give up 20%. Y'all need to come up a little better than this. This is not fair to Detroit. This is not going to help us. You're going to have these little spatterlings of people living in these developments, and we're giving up all our money. We just got looted for $600 million, and thousands of homes were illegally foreclosed. Now, and this is my biggest pet peeve, is that there will be no more people left.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ahmad. And the next and final caller is caller ending in 124. I believe that's you, Ms. Warwick. Ms. Warwick, if you can unmute yourself.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Good to hear from you.
Okay, great. So may I have double time since you wouldn't listen to me last time? You couldn't hear me, even though I came in by the phone.
We're just going to keep with 1 minute for right now, considering the time. Thank you, Ms. Warwick.
Oh, okay, 1 minute is insufficient. This is a historic public asset that essentially the city is looking to privatize. And what disturbs, I wish that people would be more creative and grab income streams greater than that for the public, because you should allow rooftop access. And there's so much money that could be made from tourism. There are more people coming to this city I've seen than when I lived here 20 years ago. There's the Fisher bodybuilding, that's accessible. I just think it can be way more creative and allow the public more access. It's like you want to create a whole nother expensive world here and keep the people out. And it's like there's a fear of people or something. And I just think things could be more creative. And there's so much public money going into this. We should have access to this public building and grab public income stream.
Thank you, Ms. Ward.
Can I say, I honestly, I brought this up last time, and I absolutely agree. You know, I'm just one person, okay? I just renovated a building in Detroit, and I actually preserved the graffiti on the perimeter walls. And people love it. I'm telling you now, you can rent out corridors for film shoots, video shoots. There are so many commercial opportunities with the existing Detroit, like graffiti, you know, creative class. I just urge you to be more creative in your approach. And I really also call out the architects, who I do respect, to also be more creative. There is no reason you can't have a corridor, like an elevator shaft. Keep the graffiti there so the elevator is glass. It may cost you $10,000 more, I don't care. But it will be an incredible, unforgettable experience that people will want to pay to go through. You need to think a little bit more international about this, you guys. It won't cost you that much more money, but it really will become an icon. And I also have not seen a rendering what it will look like from the freeways, which I really do want to see.
Thank you. And Ms. Clark, you had your hand up as well. So I just want to make sure that you were acknowledged and that your questions were answered.
Ashley was up from earlier, so yeah, okay. I was acknowledged. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, no worries.
It looks like we have one more hand that's been raised, and then I think we're going to close out. So, Mr. Vaughn, sorry, 1 second.
Yep, Mr. Harris.
If you can unmute Mr. Harris, I'd appreciate it.
Mr. Harris, yep, okay.
Yes. I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry about that. Yes. I wanted to echo a lot of what was being said earlier in terms of the international appeal. I'm a business owner. I've got 2 businesses in the area, and I work with several others in the area. We just came off the Electronic Music Festival, where we had, I think 1,000 people actually come through our spaces from all over the world over to the boulevard, to this area just north of where this development is taking place. I think it's important to recognize that there are a lot of people and a lot of businesses who've come to this area, and that there's a lot of value in what's happening here already. And I think that, you know, in terms of looking at development and things like that, I think it is important to recognize that people are already coming here. People already do live in this area, and there's a reason why it's attractive to these people. I think when you think about things about design and appeal and being able to have something that facilitates people getting in and out and being able to just exist in the area. And this is including those concerns that were voiced earlier about things like asbestos and the wastewater or the stormwater systems and all that. All of those things affect the businesses as well. And it would be a terrible thing to have something come in that not only makes things difficult for the local residents to be there, but also something that causes businesses to feel like they may have to relocate. So I just want to put that out as a concern, and thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, thank you all. And I'm sorry, was there more comment? So thank you all. I can't speak for all my partners, but I want this to be conversational, and I want to state that we saw in terms of the graffiti, the potential value, and we scanned it so that we can use it selectively. Everything that constitutes excitement for ruins. I personally, as a Detroiter, have always been very unhappy with the people who came to see the downfall. And so the people who say, let's make a monument to a downfall, you know, let's celebrate it, right? Then that's never going to be what I'm going to be focused on and so I'm going to be focused on saying, I want this to be as nice as anything in the world. Now, I'm always going to be wanting to make sure I meet National Park Service standards because it makes the project work. But the art in there, we've scanned it all and we'll put it back in as art. But setting aside the abatement of every surface, making sure that I can say there's no lead in the building, there's no asbestos in the building, there's no nastiness in the building, and then that's first and foremost. But anyone who wants to do tourism to celebrate the downfall of Detroit and stand next to ruins, we just gonna have to disagree. And because I've never been okay with that. I have never been okay with that. And I grew up in a neighborhood where people thought that my neighborhood was the type of neighborhood that you come and have a rave in because we were all poor. And we disagreed with that. We didn't want to take pictures with those people. We didn't want to hang out with them and celebrate how fun it was to come into the poor neighborhood and take pictures with the poor people and spray paint on our walls because we didn't want graffiti any more than anybody else. The art that is street art, we got it all scanned. But I cannot promise you under any circumstance that my project is going to celebrate the downfall of Detroit.
That's interesting. I mean, listen, you know, it's in a different context like Berlin, it means something different, right? So I see it honestly as a beautiful expression of time. It would be like telling like an Arab saying that they don't appreciate an artist's work who's making art during, you know, a massacre or something, right? Because they don't appreciate the massacre that's often socially accepted. So again, I don't know, I just approach it a little bit differently. I think it's beautiful, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and it sounded like Mr. Harris kind of was, didn't seem like that was where he was coming from necessarily, so there might be...
I wasn't addressing Mr. Harris, just the directly to Mr. Patrick, who talked about making sure we preserved it, to say, I get it. I'm not mad, but I'm on a different. I wanted you to understand why I disagree. That it's not just you know, but we did scan it which
is great. I mean, they're doing that at Glass Mural in Eastern Market, which I of course represented the architect for that project also. So I get it. You know, the bottom's being preserved, Chief McFly's on top. So it is happening in other sites on the city that we scan existing artwork so that we can create new architecture. So I'm fully aware of that strategy, and I love that. That's why I brought MGRDB to Detroit for that project. So you won't preserve it. It's cool. We'll find other ways to incorporate it.
Okay. Thank you all so much. I think at this point, unless do we have any more hands, but I think maybe we already said that we were going to do the last question. And I know it is late.
No, that is all for the hands.
Okay. So I'm just going to end with this.
I see another hand. And don't we supposed to call 3 times for public comment?
I don't know. Edwina?
No, so hold on one moment because it's my, are you hearing a double echo on my end? Okay, cool. So, yes, Ms. Shanita Gary, her hand is raised. As far as the 3 times for public comment, this does not comply or this is not an Open Meetings Act style meeting. So we don't have to necessarily do it. In addition to that, we have called numerous times for public comment, as well as put in the request that even as far as the beginning of the meeting, if individuals would like to speak, they were welcome to either place their information in the chat or to raise their hand. So even just using that as an example, we have called repeatedly for public comment. So.
And I actually think the hand that the attendee raised is actually Ms. Warwick, who did speak, and we also read a question of hers in from the chat earlier. So I think at this point, seeing the time, robust discussion, we all kind of have our assignments and know what needs to happen. I'm just going to mention that we do have the next meeting scheduled for Tuesday, the 14th. We are planning to be back in person at the CAT plant. So there will be the Zoom option again. So I look forward, I know there'll be a lot of activity between now and then. I look forward to all of it. I look forward to speaking with all of you. And I want to thank you all for your time, as always, because it's been very valuable and very important to making this project a success for both, the city and the community and the neighborhood. So thank you.
Thank you all so much for the conversation, the back and forth. Please know that I'm available. Obviously I don't want to intrude on your separate meeting, but I'm available if there's questions, more back and forth that needs to be had to get to a solution. That's what we are all about.
Okay.
Very much. Thank you all.
Thank you all. On behalf of the city team, thank you all again. Get some rest. Have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks all.
I'll put some music back there.